welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel. Thanks for joining me today. This summer I went to Iceland and I took a ton of photos, just a ton. Iceland is truly a photographer's dream, and if you haven't added it to your bucket list yet, I definitely suggest adding it to the top. There are so many different landscapes, from glaciers to mountains to oceans to photograph, and you will have an amazing time. I am here today with 7 tips for you to get some good shots in Iceland. If you're more of a professional photographer or a serious hobbyist or have been doing photography for a long time, this video probably isn't for you. These are going to be more basic beginner tips. So if you have just started photography or just really want to get some good photos even with your cell phone while in Iceland, then I suggest you keep watching this video and I will walk you through some equipment that you should get, some different settings, and just overall tips for getting better photos in Iceland. This is a little bit more specific to like DSLRs, but like I said, even cell phone shooters should be able to utilize some of these tips, and you will be the envy of all your friends at home with your amazing photos that you share on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you share, or if you make reels, because that's today's thing. Anywho, let's go ahead and get started. My first tip for Iceland photography is to bring a tripod. This is a must. With all of the waterfalls and everything, you want to do longer exposures so that they're nice and silky. I'll show an example of a photo without a long shutter and then one with a long shutter. You definitely want to get that silky effect with the waterfalls, and you're going to need a tripod so that there's no camera shake. If you're only doing carry-on like I do, it might be hard to fit your tripod in your luggage, but it's possible. I kind of take my tripod apart a little so it fits, or maybe you have a smaller tripod that fits better, or maybe you even have a checked bag and everything will fit better. Whatever works for you, but I definitely suggest bringing a tripod. Even if you bring like a little gorilla pod or something, it's going to be an immense help in Iceland, not just shooting waterfalls, but if it's darker and maybe evening, sunset, all of that, you want to do maybe a longer exposure, or you want to get those ocean waves nice and silky as well, you definitely want a tripod. Or if you are doing selfies and you want a tripod or a group photo or something with a remote or a timer, a tripod is also essential. So I definitely suggest bringing a tripod to Iceland. Next, you should consider bringing some kind of waterproof casing for your camera. This is not something I had, and I kind of wish I did, but yeah, Iceland, like I said, there's a lot of waterfalls, and the closer you get, the more spray, especially with the bigger waterfalls, and there's waterfalls you can walk behind and stuff, you're gonna get soaked. And you don't want your camera equipment to get ruined, so I definitely suggest bring some kind of waterproof casing, or just not getting as close like I did. I usually had a little microfiber cloth in my pocket, and I would just wipe the lens off occasionally, and the rest of my camera body got a little bit wet, but not too bad that it was like ruined or anything. But you just got to pay attention, especially also rain is really common in Iceland, mist. So just be prepared for that. And even if you don't have any kind of crazy expensive full body waterproof case, you can always just use a plastic bag or something to just help keep the moisture away from your camera equipment. The third tip is if you are visiting in summer when the midnight sun is happening, you want to be able to chase that light. It's going to be gorgeous light way late in the day. Around midnight, 1 a.m. is usually when sunset is, and golden hour and sunset both last forever, so you have a lot of beautiful light later in the day. If you're going to be out earlier, it's not going to be maybe the best light, so just keep that in mind. A good thing to do is maybe sleep during the day and then chase the midnight sun in the afternoon, evening time. We kind of did that a few days, but we had weird schedules because I was traveling with my dad, and he's an early bird and I'm a night owl, so it kind of was awkward. So we had kind of a weird thing. Usually we ended up going to bed around midnight or so, and then we would start the day maybe around noon-ish really. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you're more of a night owl, then the midnight sun is going to be epic for you, and you can stay up late, and then you can kind of rest during the time when it's actually like night. And then when the sun rises again, I think it's around 4 a.m., you can shoot that. So just kind of keep that idea in your scheduling for Iceland and trying to chase the really good light. You can also take wonderful photos at any other time of the day, especially when it's overcast. So you don't have to chase the midnight sun, but keep that in mind. Now you might be wondering what kind of lenses you should bring for your trip. I brought two, but I really only ended up using one, and it was a 16 to 80. I wish I had something that was maybe a little bit more so I could have gotten better shots of like puffins and seals. But alas, I only had the 80, so I'll kind of show some photo examples, videos of what I could do with 80 with the wildlife. But Iceland is also a really good place to have a very wide angle lens because of the mountains, the oceans, all those beautiful vistas that you want to capture. And I think the 16 to 80 was really a good choice. If you are more into wildlife, then yeah, you're gonna definitely need something much bigger than that. You don't want to overpack your camera bag, so just keep in mind exactly what kind of photos you want to take and then the lenses that are going to be best for that. Another great photography tip for Iceland is having people in your photos instead of just like the nature. This really adds a human element, and also it's a really good idea to do this for scale. So if you have that little person, it really shows how big the mountain is or how big the glacier is or whatever it is you're photographing, and it just really adds a great element to your photos instead of just being a nature photo. You want to make sure with landscape that you always have a very specific subject, and it's a good idea to have a foreground, middle ground, and background so your photo kind of all ties together. Use leading lines. I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but there are some other quick tips for you. So like I said, adding a person in your photo helps if you're lacking a main subject in a composition, or if you just want to add that element of scale, or if you just want to really take an awesome selfie. The sixth tip I have for you is to just try out different angles as you photograph the classic landscapes of Iceland. Like I said, Iceland's really popular with photographers, and a lot of people go to the same location and take the same photo as everyone else over and over again. For example, Kirkjufellsfoss is very much a top photography destination, but I feel like a lot of the photos you see are pretty much the same with the waterfall and then the mountain in the background. But you want to try your own kind of angle and composition while you're there. So walk around the area, try different angles, be a little more unique, use your creative vision to capture the location in your own way, and your photos will stand out a little bit better. You might want to come back to the same location multiple times in different lighting or weather situations. And also on that note, as you're trying different angles, make sure you don't go off the hiking paths or the marked areas where you can stand. Don't cross over any ropes or boundaries, because the ecosystem in Iceland is really delicate, and anytime you step where you aren't supposed to, you could damage it, especially moss, which takes a long time to grow back. And also it is for safety as well. You might see people who have crossed the border and are on the edge of a cliff or something, and it's just dangerous. So you really just want to be safe and protect the landscape for generations to come so people can continue to photograph it. So just walk around on the paths and try to get your own angle and composition of different landscapes. All right, my last tip is for anyone who's bringing a drone to Iceland. Iceland is a wonderful place to fly drones because it's just beautiful from above, and it helps you get different angles or helps you to get to places where you wouldn't be able to go otherwise, like a view of a volcano, or maybe from further out at sea if you are brave enough to fly over the ocean. But there are some things to keep in mind when you're flying a drone. First of all, you are not allowed to fly in any of the national parks, and also a lot of attractions will have a little yellow sign that says no drones. So just be aware of that. Pay attention to where you can and cannot fly. There are a ton of places where you can fly, so just there's no excuse to fly in a national park or somewhere where they are clearly not allowed. You don't want to be one of those people that makes a bad name for drone owners. It just grinds my gears, I guess, when there are so many regulations about drones, and you should be aware of them if you are a drone pilot. You should also pay attention to wind when you're flying, because it gets really, really windy in Iceland, especially up on cliff tops and areas near the ocean. So if it is too windy, you might not want to fly, just to protect your drone and anyone else in the area, because if it crashes and hurts someone, that's gonna be a huge issue. So just pay attention to wind alerts when you're flying. Also, during nesting bird season in the summer, you have to pay attention to the wildlife. There are some areas during nesting bird season where you are not allowed to fly to protect the birds, and they do become territorial. There were a couple of times I flew in just a random spot, and the oyster catchers especially are really aggressive towards drones. I found there was twice when they tried to take my drone down, and it's scary because I don't want to hurt the birds, and I definitely don't want them to crash my drone. So I had to fly away and land, and those are birds that are usually around water. They're black and white with really long beaks, but other birds also might get offended by a drone, so just pay attention, and if birds are near the drone, go ahead and land just to protect them and your drone. All right, so those are my 7 quick tips for beginning photography in Iceland, from equipment you need to just general tips. You are going to have an amazing time photographing Iceland. Trust me, like I said, I took a ton of photos, and I 100% want to go back to Iceland and visit some of the same spots again so I can re-photograph them and go to some new places as well. You have to go to Iceland multiple times to see everything, and I definitely suggest adding it to your bucket list, especially if you're a nature, travel, landscape photographer. You're going to have an amazing time. If you have already been to Iceland, go ahead and share some of your photos below. Share your own tips as well, and I will see you next time. This is probably going to be my last Iceland tip video. If you haven't watched any of my other ones, I will link some of them right here. I have tips for driving, camping, getting gas, and I also have a bunch of vlogs from my trip too, and go ahead and watch those. Thank you very much. Like and subscribe. I will see you next time. Bye.